The knock at the door came just as the sun bled its last light across the western hills, and Connor Oakes knew before he opened it that trouble had found him again. He set down the bread knife, wiped his flour-dusted hands on his trousers, and crossed the small kitchen of his homestead. Through the warped glass window beside the door, he could make out a large silhouette swaying slightly, one hand braced against the doorframe. Connor's jaw tightened. Out here on the frontier, 20 miles from the nearest settlement, unexpected visitors rarely brought good news. When he pulled open the door, the woman standing on his porch was not what he expected. She was an orc. That much was immediately clear. Her skin was a deep forest green, darker around her muscular arms and lighter at her throat. Two small tusks curved upward from her lower jaw, and her black hair hung in a thick braid over one shoulder. But it was her eyes that caught him first, dark amber, filled with exhaustion and something that looked like barely controlled panic. Her clothes were travel-worn and dusty, a simple leather tunic and trousers that had seen better days, and her belly, swollen with obvious pregnancy, pressed against the fabric. "Water," she said, her voice rough and cracked. "Please, just water." Connor stood frozen for a heartbeat. Every rational part of his mind screamed warnings. Orcs were dangerous. Orcs were enemies. Orcs raided human settlements and left nothing but ash. He had fought them during his years in the border militia, had seen what their warriors could do with axe and blade. But this woman was alone, heavily pregnant, and could barely stand upright. "How far have you traveled?" he asked, not moving from the doorway. 2 days. No water since yesterday morning." Her grip on the doorframe tightened, knuckles paling beneath the green skin. "Please, I only ask for water." "Then I will go." Connor made his decision. He stepped back and gestured inside. "Come in. Sit down before you fall down." She blinked at him, clearly surprised, but did not argue. She moved carefully through the doorway, one hand supporting her swollen belly, and allowed him to guide her to the worn wooden chair near the hearth. She sank into it with a small sound of relief. "Wait here," Connor said, already moving to the kitchen. He filled a clay cup with cool water from the pitcher he kept by the window and brought it back to her. She took it with trembling hands and drank deeply, her eyes closing. "Slowly," he cautioned. "You will make yourself sick." She lowered the cup and nodded, taking smaller sips. Connor watched her, his mind racing. Now that she was inside and seated, he could see more details. Her leather boots were worn through at the soles. Her hands bore old calluses and fresh blisters. Dust coated her clothing and skin, and there were dark circles beneath her eyes that spoke of many sleepless nights. "When did you last eat?" he asked. "Yesterday. Some berries I found near the creek." Connor swore under his breath. "You stay right there." He returned to the kitchen and looked at the simple supper he had been preparing for himself. Bread, cheese, cold ham, and the vegetable stew simmering over the fire. It was not fancy fare, but it was substantial and warm. He had always made too much food anyway, a habit from his militia days when he never knew if he would have another chance to eat. He worked quickly, loading a wooden tray with a bowl of stew, thick slices of bread, chunks of yellow cheese, and several pieces of ham. He filled the cup again with water and added it to the tray, then carried the whole thing back to the main room. The orc woman's eyes widened when she saw what he carried. "I only asked for water." "And I heard you," Connor said, setting the tray on the small table beside her chair. "But I am not sending a pregnant woman back out into the dark on an empty stomach. Eat." She stared at the food, then at him, her expression caught between suspicion and desperate hunger. "Why?" "Because it is the right thing to do. Now eat before it gets cold." For a long moment she did not move. Then, slowly, she reached for the bowl of stew. She brought a spoonful to her lips, tasted it, and her eyes closed again. She began to eat in earnest then, still careful but no longer hesitant. Connor watched her for a moment, then moved to the kitchen to give her some privacy. He busied himself cleaning up the flour and bread scraps, his mind working through the implications of what he had just done. Harboring an orc, even briefly, could get him in serious trouble if word reached the settlement. The frontier folk were not forgiving when it came to orc sympathizers. He had seen men beaten and driven from their homes for less, but he could not turn away a woman in need, no matter what her race. His mother had raised him better than that. When he returned to the main room, the tray was empty except for a few bread crumbs. The orc woman sat back in the chair, one hand resting on her belly, her breathing deeper and more even than before. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I did not expect such kindness from a human." "And I did not expect to find an orc on my doorstep at dusk," Connor replied. He pulled up another chair and sat across from her. "What are you doing out here alone? Where is your clan?" Her jaw tightened and she looked away. "I have no clan." "Not anymore. They cast you out. I left." Her hand moved in a slow circle over her belly. "They would have killed my child, so I left." Connor felt a chill run through him. "Why would they kill your own child?" She met his eyes then, and he saw pain there, deep and raw. "Because the father was human." The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Connor sat back, processing this information. Interspecies relationships were taboo on both sides, but he had heard rumors that orc clans dealt with such things harshly. He had not known just how harshly. "The father," he asked carefully, "dead, killed by my brother when our relationship was discovered." Her voice was flat, emotionless, but he could hear the grief beneath it. "I was meant to die too, but I fought my way out. I have been traveling ever since, looking for somewhere safe to have my baby." "How long have you been on the road?" 3 weeks, maybe 4. I have lost track." She shifted in the chair, wincing slightly. "I was hoping to reach the southern territories where I heard there are mixed settlements. Places where humans and orcs live in peace." Connor shook his head. "Those are still another 3 weeks' travel, maybe more in your condition. You will never make it." She looked down at her hands. "I know, but I have nowhere else to go. When is the baby due?" "Soon. Perhaps 2 weeks, perhaps less. I am not certain." Connor ran a hand through his dark hair, thinking. This was madness. Sheltering her even for a night was risky, but sending her back out into the wilderness to give birth alone and hunted was unthinkable. "What is your name?" he asked. She hesitated, then said, "Grushna." "I am Connor Oakes." He took a breath. "You can stay here tonight, Grushna. Tomorrow we will figure out what comes next." Her eyes widened. "You would let me stay? You do not even know me." "No, but I know what it is like to be alone and afraid. And I know that no child deserves to come into this world without someone fighting to protect them." He stood. "Come, I will show you where you can sleep." He led her to the small bedroom off the main room. It was simply furnished with a bed, a chest, and a washstand, but the linens were clean and the mattress was stuffed with fresh straw. Grushna stared at the bed as if it were a treasure beyond price. "This is your bed," she said. "I cannot take it. You can and you will. I will sleep in the chair by the fire. It would not be the first time." He gestured to the washstand. "There is water and clean cloths if you want to wash. I will be outside if you need anything." He left before she could protest further and closed the door behind him. In the main room, he sank into the chair by the hearth and let out a long breath. What had he gotten himself into? But even as he questioned his decision, he knew he would make the same choice again. His mother had taught him that kindness was not conditional, that you help those in need regardless of the cost. She had died when he was 16, taken by fever, and he had carried her lessons with him through the brutal years in the militia, and into his life on this lonely homestead. He rose and banked the fire, then settled into the chair with a blanket. Sleep did not come easily. He listened to the small sounds from the bedroom, the creak of the bed, the splash of water in the basin, and wondered what tomorrow would bring. When morning light crept through the windows, Connor woke to the smell of cooking. He sat up, disoriented for a moment, then remembered the previous night. He stood and walked to the kitchen where Grushna stood at the stove, stirring something in a pan. "You should be resting," he said. She glanced at him over her shoulder. "You fed me and gave me shelter. The least I can do is make breakfast. You do not owe me anything." "Perhaps not, but I am not accustomed to being idle." She ladled what looked like eggs and mushrooms onto 2 plates. "I found these ingredients and thought I would make myself useful." Connor accepted the plate she offered and sat at the small table. The food was good, seasoned with herbs he had growing in pots by the window. They ate in silence for a while, the awkwardness of the situation settling between them. "What will you do?" Grushna asked finally. "Will you send me away?" Connor set down his fork. "I have been thinking about that. You are in no condition to travel, and you said the baby could come any time. You should stay here until after the birth. That could be weeks." "I am aware." He met her eyes. "I will not pretend this is not complicated. If anyone from the settlement finds out, there will be trouble. But I cannot send you away knowing you and your baby might die out there." Grushna was quiet for a long moment. "You could be punished for this." "Humans do not look kindly on those who aid orcs. Neither do orcs look kindly on those who aid humans, from what you have told me. Yet here we both are." He stood and collected their plates. "We will be careful. My nearest neighbor is 5 miles away, and the settlement is 20 miles beyond that. As long as you stay close to the house, no one will know you are here." "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice soft. "You do not know me. You owe me nothing." Connor turned to look at her. In the morning light, she looked younger than he had first thought, perhaps close to his own age of 25. The exhaustion still shadowed her features, but there was strength there too, and a dignity that hardship had not erased. "Because it is right," he said simply. "And because I have seen enough death and cruelty, I will not add to it if I have a choice." Grushna looked down at her hands, blinking rapidly. "Thank you, Connor Oakes. I will not forget this kindness." The days that followed fell into a cautious routine. Connor went about his usual work, tending his small garden, repairing fences, chopping wood for the coming winter, while Grushna rested and slowly regained her strength. She insisted on helping where she could, preparing meals and tidying the house despite his protests. He learned that she had been a hunter in her clan, skilled with bow and knife, and that she missed the forest and the freedom of the hunt. "I feel like a caged animal sometimes," she admitted one afternoon as they sat on the porch, shelling peas from the garden. "I am grateful to be safe, but I long to move, to run, to feel useful." "You are useful," Connor said, "and you are growing a whole person inside you. That seems like enough work to me." She smiled slightly, a rare expression that softened her features. "You do not understand. Orc women are warriors and hunters. We do not sit idle." "Then think of this as a different kind of battle, one you fight by surviving and protecting your child." Grushna considered this, then nodded slowly. "Perhaps you are right." As the days passed, Connor found himself enjoying her company more than he expected. She was intelligent and direct, with a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard. She told him stories of orc culture, of their clan structure and traditions, and he shared tales of his own life, his childhood on a farm, his years in the militia, his decision to leave that life behind and build a home on the frontier. "Why did you leave the militia?" she asked one evening as they sat by the fire. Connor was quiet for a moment, staring into the flames. "I got tired of killing, Tired of seeing my friends die, tired of fighting in a war that seemed to have no end. He glanced at her. I killed orcs during my service, many of them. I thought I was protecting my people, and maybe I was. But after a while, I started to question whether there was another way. What made you question it? He rubbed his jaw, remembering. There was a raid on a border village. We drove off the attackers, and I pursued one of them into the woods. When I caught up, I found a young orc, maybe 17, wounded and bleeding. He begged me for mercy in broken human tongue, said he had been forced to fight, that he did not want to be there. Connor's voice dropped. I let him go, told him to run and never come back. My commander found out and said I was weak, that I had endangered us all. That was when I knew I could not do it anymore. Grushna reached out and placed her hand over his. Her skin was warm and rough from work. That was not weakness. That was strength. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers with hers. The gesture felt natural, right, though he knew it should not. Sometimes I wonder what happened to that boy, if he made it home, if he found peace. Perhaps he did. And perhaps your mercy changed him, made him question the same things you did. She squeezed his hand gently. Kindness is powerful, Connor. Never doubt that. They sat like that for a while, hands joined, watching the fire burn low. Connor felt something shift inside him, a warmth that had nothing to do with the flames and everything to do with the woman beside him. It was dangerous, this feeling. Foolish, even. But he could not deny it. As the second week stretched into the third, Grushna grew visibly more uncomfortable. Her belly had dropped, and she moved with increasing difficulty. Connor did what he could to make her comfortable, bringing her cushions and cool water, adjusting the height of chairs so she could sit more easily. The baby will come soon, she said one morning, her hand pressed to her side. I can feel it. Connor felt a spike of anxiety. How soon? Days, maybe less. She met his eyes. You do not have to stay. I have delivered babies before for other clan members. I know what to do. You are not doing this alone, Connor said firmly. I will be here. You have no experience with childbirth. Then you will tell me what to do. He set his jaw stubbornly. You are not going through this by yourself, Grushna. That is final. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Very well, thank you. That afternoon, Connor rode to the settlement to purchase supplies, something he did once a month anyway. He bought extra linens, soap, and a few other items he thought might be useful, trying not to appear suspicious. The general store owner, a gruff man named Harker, eyed his purchases. Planning something, oaks, just preparing for winter, Connor said easily. Want to make sure I have everything I need before the snow comes. Harker grunted, apparently satisfied, and Connor left before any more questions could be asked. As he rode back toward his homestead, he felt the weight of what he was doing settle on his shoulders. He was not just sheltering Grushna now. He was helping her bring a half-orc child into the world, a child that would be rejected by both humans and orcs. The responsibility of that felt enormous. But when he returned home and found Grushna sitting by the window, her hand on her belly and a small smile on her face as she felt the baby move, he knew he could not abandon her. Whatever came next, they would face it together. That night, Connor woke to the sound of movement in the bedroom. He sat up quickly, instantly alert, and heard Grushna's sharp intake of breath. He lit a candle and went to the bedroom door, knocking softly. Grushna, are you all right? The baby is coming. Her voice was strained but steady. It has begun. Connor pushed open the door and found her standing beside the bed, one hand braced against the post, breathing through a contraction. When it passed, she looked up at him. I need your help. Tell me what to do. She directed him calmly, her voice never wavering despite the pain he could see in her eyes. He brought water and clean linens, stoked the fire until the room was warm, and helped her onto the bed when the contractions grew stronger. The night stretched on, marked by Grushna's labored breathing and the occasional sound of her gripping the sheets as waves of pain washed over her. Connor stayed beside her, offering water when she needed it, supporting her when she wanted to stand and walk, holding her hand when the pain became intense. He had faced battle and violence, but this was different. This was raw and primal, a struggle between life and the resistance of the body. "You are doing well," he told her during a brief respite. "You are strong." "I do not feel strong," she closed her eyes. "I feel like I am being torn apart. But you are still fighting. That is strength." She gripped his hand as another contraction began, her fingers crushing his with surprising force. Connor bore it without complaint, murmuring encouragement until it passed. As dawn broke, the contractions came faster and harder. Grushna's face was slick with sweat, her hair plastered to her forehead. Connor could see her fading, exhaustion taking its toll. "I cannot," she gasped. "I cannot do this." "Yes, you can." He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You have survived everything that has been thrown at you. You escaped your clan. You traveled alone through hostile territory. You have fought for your child every single day. You can do this, Grushna. I know you can." She stared at him, breathing hard, then nodded. "Stay with me." "I am not going anywhere." The sun had fully risen when the baby finally came, emerging with a powerful cry that filled the small room. Connor moved quickly, following Grushna's instructions to clean the infant and cut the cord. He wrapped the baby in soft cloth and placed her for it was a girl in Grushna's waiting arms. Grushna stared down at her daughter, tears streaming down her face. "She is perfect." Connor looked at the baby and felt his chest tighten. She had her mother's green skin, though lighter, and tiny tusks that were barely visible. Her hair was dark like Grushna's, but her features held a softness that must have come from her human father. She was beautiful. "What will you name her?" he asked softly. Grushna was quiet for a moment, then said, "Shara." It means dawn in the old Orcish tongue. She was born with the sunrise, and she is my new beginning. "Shara," Connor smiled. "It is a good name." He helped Grushna clean up and change into fresh clothes, then brought her food and water. She ate while cradling Shara, who had settled into contented sleep. Connor watched them, feeling something profound settle in his chest. This woman and her child had become important to him, more important than he had realized. "Thank you," Grushna said, looking up at him. "I could not have done this without you. You could have, but I am glad you did not have to." He sat on the edge of the bed. "Rest now. I will be nearby if you need anything." But Grushna reached out and caught his hand before he could leave. "Connor, stay, just for a moment." He settled beside her, and she leaned her head against his shoulder, exhausted but peaceful. They sat like that, the three of them, as the morning light filled the room. Connor felt a fierce protectiveness rise in him, a determination that nothing would harm this woman or her child while he had breath in his body. The weeks that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and constant activity. Shara was a healthy baby but demanded attention at all hours. Connor found himself learning skills he never expected to need: how to soothe a crying infant, how to change soiled cloths, how to tell the difference between hungry cries and tired cries. Grushna recovered her strength quickly, her orc constitution serving her well, but she was clearly touched by his willingness to help. "Most men would not do this," she said one night as they sat together, Shara sleeping between them in a cradle Connor had hastily constructed. "Most would say this is women's work. Most men are fools." Connor reached out and adjusted the blanket over Shara. "She is perfect. How could anyone not want to be part of her life?" Grushna looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. "You speak as if you plan to be part of her life for a long time." Connor met her eyes. Do you want to leave? I do not know where I would go. The southern territories are still far, and I have no money, no supplies. I am trapped here. You are not trapped. You are safe. He hesitated, then said, You could stay, Grushna, both of you, for as long as you want. Why would you offer that? We are nothing to you. You are not nothing. The words came out more forcefully than he intended. You are important to me, both of you. These past weeks, having you here, it has made this house feel like a home instead of just a place to sleep. I do not want you to leave. Grushna stared at him, her amber eyes wide. Connor, you do not know what you are saying. If we stay, you will be risking everything. Your reputation, your safety, your future. I know exactly what I am saying. He reached across the cradle and took her hand. I care about you, Grushna, more than I should, maybe, but I cannot help it. You are brave and strong and kind, and you have fought harder than anyone I know to protect your daughter. How could I not care about you? She was silent for a long moment, blinking back tears. I care about you too, but this is complicated. We are from different worlds, Connor, different species. Humans and orcs are not meant to be together, says who? The same people who would have killed your daughter for being different. The same people who sent me to kill orcs I did not even know. He shook his head. I am done listening to other people's prejudices. I want to listen to my own heart, and my heart says you belong here, with me. Grushna pulled her hand free and stood, moving to the window. Connor could see her shoulders trembling. You make it sound so simple, but it is not. If anyone finds out, they will hurt you. They might kill you. I could not bear that. Then we will be careful. We will keep to ourselves, and if anyone comes around, we will figure something out. He stood and moved to stand behind her, not touching but close enough that she could feel his presence. I am not afraid, Grushna. Not of them, and not of what I feel for you. She turned to face him, tears sliding down her green cheeks. I have never been afraid of anything in my life until now. I am terrified of letting myself love you, Connor, because I know how easily it can be taken away. I cannot promise we will not face hardship, but I can promise I will fight for you every day, no matter what comes. He reached up and gently wiped away her tears with his thumb. Let me fight for you, Grushna. Let me be part of your life and Shara's. She closed her eyes and leaned into his touch. I do not deserve you. You deserve everything good this world has to offer. He leaned forward and pressed his forehead to hers, a gesture he had seen orcs used to show affection. Say yes, stay with me. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will stay. Connor pulled her into his arms, holding her close. She wrapped her arms around him, and they stood like that for a long time, taking comfort in each other's presence. When Shara began to fuss in her cradle, they broke apart with small smiles and tended to her together, a family in all but name. The autumn deepened, bringing cooler temperatures and shorter days. Connor continued his work on the homestead, and Grushna helped where she could, often with Shara strapped to her back in a sling Connor had fashioned from soft cloth. They fell into an easy partnership, each anticipating the other's needs, working together to prepare for the coming winter. Connor found himself watching Grushna more often than he should, admiring the way she moved with unconscious grace, the way she sang to Shara in the orcish tongue, the way her face lit up when she laughed. He had been lonely for so long, ever since leaving the militia, and he had not realized how much he craved companionship until she came into his life. One evening, as they sat by the fire after putting Shara to bed, Grushna broke the comfortable silence. Tell me something, she said. Have you ever been in love before? Connor considered the question. I thought I was once. There was a girl in my village before I joined the militia. We talked about getting married, having a farm together. But when I came back after my first tour, she had married someone else. Said she could not wait for a man who might never return. That must have hurt. It did at the time, but now I think maybe it was for the best. We were young, and I do not think we truly knew each other. He looked at Grushna. What about you? Was Shara's father the only man you loved? Grushna's expression grew distant. I loved him, yes. His name was Tomas. He was a trader who came to our clan's territory regularly. We would meet in secret, knowing it was forbidden. He was kind and gentle, nothing like the warriors I had grown up with. He made me feel seen, valued for more than just my strength. How did your brother find out? Someone saw us together and reported it to the clan elders. My brother was given the task of executing both of us to preserve the clan's honor. Her voice was flat, controlled. He killed Tomas quickly. I fought back, wounded my brother badly, and fled. I do not know if he survived. I do not care. Connor reached out and took her hand. I am sorry you went through that. I am not. If I had not fled, I would not have Shara, and I would not have met you. She squeezed his hand. You have shown me that there is still goodness in this world, Connor, that not all humans are cruel or hateful. And you have shown me that orcs are not the monsters I was taught to fear, that your people are as complex and worthy of respect as anyone. He lifted her hand and kissed it gently. Thank you for trusting me. Grushna smiled, a full, genuine smile that transformed her face. Thank you for being worthy of trust. They talked late into the night, sharing stories and dreams, learning more about each other with every passing hour. Connor felt a contentment he had never known before, a sense that he was exactly where he was meant to be, but their peace was not destined to last. It was a cold morning in late autumn when the trouble came. Connor was outside chopping wood when he heard the sound of horses approaching. He set down his axe and wiped his hands, concern prickling at the back of his neck. Visitors were rare, and the sound of multiple horses meant this was not a casual call. 3 riders emerged from the tree line, and Connor's stomach sank when he recognized the lead horse. It belonged to his nearest neighbor, a man named Gerald who lived 5 miles to the east. With him were 2 other men Connor knew from the settlement, both of them members of the local militia. Oaks, Gerald called as they approached. We need to talk. Connor moved to meet them, positioning himself between the riders and the house. Gerald, what brings you out here? Gerald dismounted, his expression grim. We have had reports of orc activity in the area, tracks, signs of a camp. The settlement is organizing patrols, making sure everyone is safe. He looked past Connor toward the house. Thought we would check on you, see if you have seen anything unusual. I have not seen any orc activity, Connor said, keeping his voice level. Everything has been quiet. One of the other men, a stocky fellow named Brent, leaned forward in his saddle. You sure about that, Oaks? We found tracks not far from here. Big ones. Fresh. Connor's mind raced. Grushna had gone into the woods yesterday to check the snares he had set for rabbits. She must have left tracks and these men had found them. I told you I have seen nothing. Gerald studied him for a moment, his eyes narrowed. You mind if we look around, just to be safe? Yes, I do mind. This is my property and I do not appreciate the implication that I am lying. Now do not get defensive, Oaks, we are just doing our duty. Gerald took a step forward. You got something to hide in there. I have a right to privacy. That is all. Connor crossed his arms. You have no authority to search my home without cause. The third man, a young fighter named Marcus, spoke up. The tracks led right to your property line, Oaks. That seems like cause to me. Then the orc you are tracking passed through and kept going. I cannot help you beyond that. Gerald and Brent exchanged glances. We are going to need to take a look inside, Oaks. If you are innocent, you have nothing to worry about. No, Connor's voice was hard. You will leave now, or we will have a problem. Gerald's hand moved to the sword at his hip. Do not make this difficult. Before the situation could escalate further, the door to the house opened. Grushna stepped out onto the porch, Shara in her arms. She had clearly heard the confrontation and decided that hiding was pointless. The effect on the three men was immediate. Brent swore loudly and drew his sword. Marcus reached for his bow. Gerald's face went red with fury. "You are harboring an orc," Gerald shouted. "Have you lost your mind?" Connor moved quickly to stand between Grushna and the armed men. "She is under my protection. Leave now, and no one needs to get hurt." "Under your protection," Gerald spat. "She is a monster, Oaks, and that thing she is holding is an abomination. We should kill them both right now." Rage flared in Connor's chest, hot and fierce. "You will not touch them." Grushna's voice rang out clear and strong. "I am no threat to you. I seek only shelter for myself and my child. I have harmed no one." "Your kind are always a threat," Brent snarled. "We should burn this place to the ground with all of you in it." "Try it," Connor said quietly, "and I will put you in the ground first." The tension stretched taut as a bowstring. Connor could see the calculations running through Gerald's mind. Connor was a trained fighter, a veteran of the militia. In close quarters, he could likely take at least one of them before they brought him down. But more importantly, killing another human over an orc would require explanation, and Gerald knew the settlement council would demand answers. Finally, Gerald stepped back. "You have made your choice, Oaks. You are a traitor to your own kind. When we report this to the settlement, they will deal with you appropriately." "Do what you have to do," Connor replied, "but you will leave my property now." The three men remounted their horses. As they turned to leave, Gerald called back, "You are a dead man, Oaks. You just do not know it yet." Connor watched until they disappeared into the trees, then turned to Grushna. She stood on the porch, her face pale but composed. Shara was crying softly, disturbed by the raised voices. "I am sorry," Grushna said. "I thought if I showed myself, they might see we are no threat. I did not mean to make things worse." "You did nothing wrong." Connor climbed the steps and put his arms around both her and Shara, holding them close. "This is not your fault. What will happen now?" "They will report to the settlement. The council will likely send men to deal with the situation." He pulled back and looked at her. "We do not have much time. We need to prepare." "We should run," Grushna said. "Take Shara and disappear into the wilderness. You could come with us." Connor shook his head. "They would track us down, and winter is coming. We would not survive in the wild with an infant." He took her hand. "We have to make a stand here, together. Connor, they will kill you because of me. They will try, but I am not easy to kill." He managed a grim smile. "I have faced worse odds. Not for someone like me, not for an orc." He cupped her face in his hands. "For you, I would face anything. You and Shara are my family now. I will protect you with everything I have." Tears filled her eyes. "You are a fool, Connor Oaks. Probably. But I am your fool." He kissed her forehead. "Now come inside. We have preparations to make." They spent the rest of the day preparing for the worst. Connor checked his weapons, a sword from his militia days, a hunting bow, and several knives. He boarded up the windows on the ground floor and reinforced the door. Grushna helped where she could, moving supplies into the house and preparing food that would keep. As night fell, they sat together in the main room, Shara asleep in her cradle. The tension was palpable, both of them listening for the sound of approaching riders. "Tell me something," Grushna said softly. "If you could go back and change your decision to help me that first night, would you?" Connor did not hesitate. "No, never. Even knowing it would lead to this. Especially knowing it would lead to this." He took her hand. "Before you came, I was just existing, going through the motions, alone and purposeless. You gave me something to fight for, something to believe in. I would not trade that for anything." Grushna lifted his hand to her lips and kissed it. "I love you, Connor Oaks. I did not want to say it, did not want to make this harder, But if tonight is all we have, I want you to know. I love you too, Grushna." He pulled her close, holding her as if he could shield her from everything the world might throw at them. "And tonight is not all we have. We are going to survive this. I promise you." They held each other as the hours passed, drawing strength from their closeness. Connor thought about his life, about all the choices that had led him to this moment. He had no regrets. If fighting for the woman he loved and her innocent child made him a traitor, then he would wear that label with pride. The attack came 3 days later. Connor had been on edge the entire time, barely sleeping, constantly watching for signs of trouble. When it finally came, it was not subtle. 20 men rode up to the homestead in the early morning light, armed and ready for violence. Connor recognized most of them from the settlement, farmers and craftsmen who had taken up weapons at the council's order. He met them outside, his sword belted at his hip, his bow in hand. That is far enough. The leader was a man named Dalton, the settlement's magistrate. He was in his 50s, gray-haired and stern-faced. "Connor Oakes, you have been accused of harboring an orc enemy and refusing to surrender it to proper authority. The council has ordered that the orc be turned over for execution, and that you be brought to the settlement to face judgment." "The council has no authority over me. I am not part of your settlement. You benefit from our protection and our trade. That gives us authority." Dalton's voice was hard. "Do not make this more difficult than it needs to be. Give up the orc and we will let you explain yourself to the council. She is not in it, and she is not your enemy. She is a woman with a child seeking only safety. If you cannot see that, then you are more blind than I thought." Dalton's face reddened. "She is an orc. That makes her an enemy by definition. Now hand her over or we will take her by force." "You will have to go through me," one of the men in the back shouted. "Then we will go through you." Connor raised his bow and drew an arrow, aiming at Dalton. "I am a trained soldier. I can put 5 arrows in 5 of you before you get close enough to swing a sword. Who wants to be first?" The men shifted uneasily. Connor's reputation as a fighter was known, and no one wanted to be the first casualty. Dalton held up a hand. "Hold. Oakes, be reasonable. You cannot win this fight. Even if you kill some of us, we will eventually overwhelm you, and then you will die for nothing." "Maybe, but I will die knowing I stood for something that mattered. Can you say the same?" Before Dalton could respond, Grushna's voice rang out from the porch. "Stop, please stop." Connor turned to see her standing there, Shara in her arms. His heart sank. "Grushna, get back inside." "No." She walked forward, her head held high despite the fear Connor could see in her eyes. "I will not let you die for me, Connor. I will not let you throw away your life. Grushna, please, I am tired of running, tired of hiding." She stopped beside him and looked at the assembled men. "I am Grushna, daughter of Krusk of the Stonefang clan. I left my people because they would have killed my child for being half-human. I came here seeking only shelter and water, and this man gave me both. He has shown me more kindness and honor than anyone I have ever known. If you want to kill me, then do so, but know that you are executing an innocent woman and her child." The men stared at her, some with open hatred, others with uncertainty. Dalton's expression was troubled. "That is a half-breed abomination," someone in the crowd shouted. "It needs to die." Grushna held Shara closer. "She is a baby. She has done nothing wrong. If your hearts are so hardened that you can kill an infant, then you are the monsters, not us." Dalton looked at the baby, and Connor saw something shift in his expression. "Let me see the child." Connor tensed. "Stay back." "I will not harm it. I just want to see." Grushna hesitated, then stepped forward and angled Shara so Dalton could see her face. The baby was awake, her large eyes staring up at the magistrate with innocent curiosity. She made a small cooing sound. Dalton stared at her for a long moment. She looks almost human. She is half human, Grushna said softly. Her father was a trader named Tomas. He was killed for loving me. I do not want my daughter to die because of what she is, because she represents something people fear. She deserves a chance to live, to grow, to find her own place in this world. Another man pushed forward. It was Gerald, Connor's neighbor. Do not listen to her lies. She is manipulating you. Orcs are deceitful and cruel. The child will grow up to be the same. You do not know that, Connor said. You cannot judge her for what she might become. She is an infant. She is an orc, Gerald spat, and orcs cannot be trusted. Dalton held up his hand. Enough. He looked at Connor and Grushna. This is an impossible situation. The council sent us to execute the orc and bring you in. But I find myself unwilling to kill a woman holding a baby, regardless of her race. Then leave, Connor said. Walk away and let us live in peace. I cannot do that. The council's orders were clear. If I return without completing the task, others will come and they will not be as hesitant. Dalton rubbed his face tiredly. There has to be another way, Grushna spoke up. What if we left, went far away where we would never trouble your settlement again? Where would you go? Dalton asked. Winter is coming, you would not survive. We would find a way, Grushna said, though Connor could hear the doubt in her voice. Connor thought quickly, an idea forming. What if we had somewhere to go? Somewhere safe? Dalton looked at him. What are you suggesting? There are mixed settlements in the southern territories. Places where humans and orcs live together. If we had supplies and a head start, we could reach them before winter truly sets in. You would leave your home, your land. For her, yes, without hesitation. Dalton was quiet, considering. Finally, he said, I could give you 3 days. Tell the council that you fled before we arrived, that we tracked you but lost your trail. It would give you a chance. Gerald protested. You cannot let them escape. The council will accept my report, Dalton said sharply. Unless you want to challenge my authority. Gerald subsided, though his expression was murderous. Dalton looked at Connor. 3 days, Oaks. After that, if anyone asks, I will say I do not know where you went, but do not come back here, ever. Understood? Connor lowered his bow. Thank you, Dalton. The magistrate nodded curtly, then turned to his men. We are leaving. The fugitives escaped. That is what we will report. Some of the men grumbled, but they followed Dalton's orders, mounting their horses and riding away. Connor watched until they were out of sight, then turned to Grushna. We need to pack, quickly. They worked through the day and into the night, gathering everything they could carry. Connor loaded the wagon with food, blankets, tools, and weapons. Grushna packed her few belongings and prepared supplies for Shara. They moved with desperate efficiency, knowing that every moment counted. As dawn broke on the second day, they were ready. Connor hitched his horse to the wagon and helped Grushna and Shara onto the seat beside him. He took one last look at the homestead he had built, the place that had been his refuge from the world. It hurt to leave, but he knew he was making the right choice. Are you ready? He asked Grushna. She took his hand. As long as I am with you, I am ready for anything. He squeezed her hand, then snapped the reins. The wagon lurched into motion, carrying them away from the only home Connor had known and toward an uncertain future. The journey south was long and difficult. The roads were rough, and the weather grew colder each day. They traveled from dawn until dusk, stopping only when necessary. Shara was surprisingly good-natured about the constant movement, sleeping through most of the jolting wagon ride. At night, they would make camp and huddle together for warmth, the baby between them. Connor stood watch for several hours each night, his bow close at hand, alert for any signs of pursuit or danger. Grushna took her turn as well, her hunter's senses sharp even in the darkness. You think they will follow us? She asked one night as they sat by the fire. Dalton gave his word he would not, but Gerald is another matter. He hates orcs with a passion I do not understand. Connor poked at the fire with a stick. We need to stay vigilant. I am sorry I brought this trouble into your life. Connor looked at her. Stop apologizing. You did not choose any of this, and even if you had, I would make the same choices. She leaned her head on his shoulder. What will we do when we reach the Southern Territories? Will they accept us? I hope so. From what I have heard, they are more tolerant of mixed couples and half-breeds. They understand that the old prejudices serve no purpose. He put his arm around her. We will build a new life there, find work, make a home, give Shara a place where she can grow up without fear. You make it sound so simple. It will not be simple, but it will be worth it. He kissed the top of her head. I promise you that. They continued south, following old traders' roads and avoiding settlements whenever possible. Connor hunted game to supplement their supplies, and Grushna showed him which plants and roots were safe to eat. They worked together seamlessly, their partnership growing stronger with each passing day. One evening, as they made camp in a sheltered grove, Grushna approached Connor with something in her hands. It was a necklace, crudely made from braided leather and a single polished stone. I made this for you, she said, holding it out. In my culture, when an orc woman chooses a mate, she gives him a token of her commitment. This stone is from the river near where I grew up. It is all I have of my former life, and I want you to have it. Connor took the necklace, touched by the gesture. Grushna, I do not know what to say. Say you will wear it. Say you will be mine as I am yours. He pulled the necklace over his head, settling the stone against his chest. I will wear it always. And I will be yours, for as long as you will have me. She smiled, that beautiful smile that made his heart ache. Then I have everything I need. That night, after Shara was asleep in her makeshift cradle, Connor and Grushna sat close together by the fire. The air was cold, but the warmth between them was enough. I never thought I would find this, Grushna said softly. After Tomas died, I believed I would never love again, that I would spend my life alone, protecting my daughter and asking for nothing more. And now I have hope. Hope for a future where Shara can grow up with two parents who love her. Hope that maybe, somehow, we can build something good from all this pain. She looked at him. You gave me that hope, Connor. He took her hand and brought it to his lips. You gave me purpose. Before you, I was drifting, going through the motions of living without really being alive. You changed that. We saved each other, she said. We did. They kissed then, a slow, tender kiss that spoke of promises and possibilities. When they broke apart, Connor rested his forehead against hers, breathing in her scent. When we reach the Southern Territories, I want to marry you, he said. Properly, in whatever way they do such things there. I want everyone to know that you are mine and I am yours. Grushna's eyes widened. You want to marry me, even knowing what it means. I want to marry you because of what it means, because it is right, because I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. She closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. Then yes, I will marry you, Connor Oakes. They held each other as the fire burned low, both of them imagining the life they would build together. It would not be easy, Connor knew. They would face prejudice and hardship, and there would be times when they questioned their choices. But as long as they faced it together, he believed they could overcome anything. The wagon rolled into the first Southern Territory settlement 3 weeks after they had fled Connor's homestead. It was a small place, more of a trading post than a proper town, but Connor could immediately see the difference from the northern settlements. Humans and orcs moved among each other freely, trading and talking without apparent fear or hostility. There were even a few half-orc children playing in the streets, their laughter ringing out in the cold air. This is it, Connor said, relief flooding through him. We made it. Grushna stared at the scene before her, hardly daring to believe it. They really do live together here. They do. He turned to her with a smile. Welcome to our new home. They found lodging at a small inn run by a friendly human woman named Ada, who did not even blink at the sight of them together. She cooed over Shara and gave them a clean room with a real bed, the first they had slept in since leaving Connor's homestead. Over the following days, Connor and Grushna explored the settlement and met with the local council to request permission to settle permanently. The council, which included both humans and orcs, listened to their story and granted their request without hesitation. "We have many mixed families here," one of the orc councilors said. "You will fit right in. There is land available to the west if you want to farm, or work available in the settlement if you prefer." Connor chose the land. He had always been a farmer at heart, and the idea of building a new homestead, this time with Grushna by his side, appealed to him. They purchased a modest plot, with the money Connor had brought from the sale of some of his tools and possessions, and began the work of building a home. The community welcomed them warmly. Neighbors helped raise the walls of their small house, and Grushna quickly made friends with other orc women in the settlement. For the first time since fleeing her clan, she had a community again, people who understood her and did not judge her for her choices. Shara thrived in the new environment. She grew quickly, a happy, healthy baby who was doted on by everyone she met. Connor often found himself watching her with wonder, amazed that this small person could inspire such fierce love in his heart. On a cold, clear day in midwinter, Connor and Grushna stood before the settlement's elder, a half-orc woman named Thara, who officiated such ceremonies, and pledged their lives to each other. It was a small ceremony, attended only by their closest neighbors and friends, but it was perfect. Grushna wore a simple dress that one of the women had helped her make, and Connor wore his best shirt and trousers. When Thara asked Connor if he took Grushna as his wife, he did not hesitate. "I do, with all my heart." When she asked Grushna the same, the orc woman looked at Connor with shining eyes. "I do, forever." Thara smiled and placed a hand on each of their shoulders. "Then, by the authority vested in me by this community, I declare you husband and wife. May your love be as strong as iron and as enduring as stone." They kissed to the sound of cheering, and Connor felt complete in a way he never had before. This was his family. This was his home, and he would protect it with everything he had. The months that followed were the happiest of Connor's life. He worked his land, planting crops for the coming season and building improvements to their small home. Grushna helped with everything, her strength and skill making tasks that would have taken him days accomplish in hours. Shara grew and began to crawl, her curiosity leading her into every corner of their home. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Grushna spoke. "Do you ever regret it, leaving your old life behind?" Connor considered the question. "Sometimes I miss the familiarity of it. The land I worked for so many years, but I do not regret leaving. How could I when it brought me here, to you? I am glad." She rested her hand on her belly, a small smile playing at her lips. "Because our family is about to get bigger." Connor stared at her, his mind taking a moment to process her words. "You are pregnant?" "Yes. I suspected for a while, but I wanted to be certain before I told you." Joy surged through him, so intense it almost hurt. "Grushna, that is wonderful." "That is." He could not find the words, so he pulled her into his arms and held her tight. She laughed, the sound full of happiness. "I take it you are pleased." "Pleased does not even begin to cover it." He pulled back to look at her face. "I am honored, grateful, terrified, all of it at once." "We will face it together, just like we face everything else." "Together," Connor agreed. "Always." As the seasons turned and spring arrived, their home truly came to life. The crops Connor had planted began to sprout, green shoots pushing through the dark earth. Grushna's belly grew round with their child, and Shara took her first steps, tottering around the house with determined concentration. Connor built a larger bed for Shara and started work on a second sleeping room for the new baby. He carved toys from wood and repaired their tools. Every evening, he would sit with Grushna and Shara, reading from the few books they owned or telling stories of his childhood. The community continued to embrace them. Connor made friends with other farmers and shared knowledge about crops and livestock. Grushna taught some of the younger women about hunting and tracking, skills that were valued in the frontier settlement. They contributed to community projects and attended gatherings, becoming a respected part of the social fabric. When Grushna went into labor on a warm summer morning, Connor stayed by her side just as he had with Shara's birth. This time, there was a midwife present, a kind human woman named Eliza who had delivered dozens of babies, both human and orc. But Connor still held Grushna's hand through every contraction, murmuring encouragement and love. Their son was born just after noon, smaller than Shara had been but healthy and strong. He had Connor's dark hair and Grushna's green-tinted skin, a perfect blend of both his parents. They named him Eric after Connor's father. Holding his son for the first time, Connor felt tears stream down his face. This was his child, his blood, born of the woman he loved. It was a miracle he had never expected to experience. "He is perfect," Connor whispered. Grushna, exhausted but radiant, smiled at him. "We made him together, out of love. The best thing I ever did was open that door the night you knocked," Connor said. "I could have turned you away, but something told me to help and it changed my entire life. You saved me that night. You and your kindness." Grushna reached up and touched his face. "And I will love you for it every day for the rest of my life." They brought Eric home to meet his sister, and Shara stared at her baby brother with wide-eyed fascination. She gently touched his tiny hand and said, "Baby," her first clear word. Connor and Grushna laughed, both of them overwhelmed with the perfection of the moment. Their family was complete. The years rolled on, each one bringing new challenges and joys. The farm prospered, yielding enough crops to support the family and trade for other necessities. Shara grew into a bright, curious child who loved learning and exploring. Eric was more cautious but thoughtful, often sitting quietly and watching the world with intelligent eyes. Connor taught both children to read and write, using the primers he had learned from as a boy. Grushna taught them about the natural world, how to track animals and identify plants, how to move quietly through the forest. Together, they raised their children to be strong, kind, and open-minded. The settlement grew as well, attracting more families seeking a place where humans and orcs could live in peace. Connor served on the community council for a time, helping to mediate disputes and plan for the settlement's future. Grushna organized hunting parties and taught combat skills to those who wanted to learn. They faced prejudice occasionally. Traders from the north would sometimes make snide remarks about their mixed family, and there were always those who believed humans and orcs should remain separate. But the community stood by them, and Connor and Grushna stood by each other. Their love was a shield against hatred, a light in the darkness. One autumn evening, when Shara was 7 and Eric was 4, the family sat around their dinner table sharing a meal. Shara was telling a story about something that had happened at the community school, waving her hands dramatically to illustrate her point. Eric listened with rapt attention, occasionally interjecting questions. Grushna laughed at Shara's theatrical flair, and Connor smiled, content. After the children were in bed, Connor and Grushna sat together on their porch, a blanket wrapped around their shoulders against the cool night air. The stars blazed overhead, countless and bright. "You remember that first night?" Grushna asked softly. "When I knocked on your door asking for water. I remember every detail. You looked so tired and scared, but you held yourself with such dignity. I could not turn you away. I thought you would. I thought you would slam the door in my face or worse, but you invited me in. You fed me. You gave me hope when I had none left." Connor pulled her closer. "And you gave me a reason to live again, a reason to believe in something beyond just surviving. We have built something beautiful here, Connor, something worth fighting for. We have. And I would do it all again, 1,000 times over." He kissed her forehead. "I love you, Grushna, more than words can say. I love you too, always." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars and listening to the night sounds of their farm. Inside the house, their children slept peacefully, safe and loved. The world beyond their small holding was still fraught with prejudice and conflict, but here, in this place they had built together, there was only peace. Connor thought back to the man he had been before Grushna came into his life. Lonely, purposeless, drifting through days without meaning. He had been alive but not truly living. Now every day was filled with purpose and love. He woke each morning eager to see his wife's face, to hear his children's laughter, to work the land that sustained them. It had all started with a simple act of kindness, a cup of water offered to a desperate stranger. From that small seed, an entire life had grown: a marriage, a family, a home. Connor marveled at how much could change from one choice, one moment of compassion. "What are you thinking about?" Grushna asked, noticing his thoughtful expression. "How lucky I am, how grateful I am for everything we have." "I am grateful too, for you, for our children, for this place." She paused. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not helped me that night?" "Sometimes. But then I remember I did not really have a choice, not in any meaningful way. My mother raised me to help those in need, and you needed help. Everything else followed from that. Your mother would be proud of you. I hope so. I hope she would love you and the children as much as I do." "I am certain she would." They fell silent again, content in each other's presence. The years had brought them closer together, deepening their bond until it was unbreakable. They had weathered storms and celebrated triumphs, always side by side. Connor could not imagine his life without Grushna, without their children, without the home they had built together. As the night grew later and the cold more pronounced, they finally rose and went inside. Connor banked the fire in the hearth while Grushna checked on the children. Both Shara and Eric were sleeping soundly, peaceful and safe. In their own bed, Connor pulled Grushna close, her back against his chest, his arm draped over her waist. This was his favorite time of day, these quiet moments when the world narrowed to just the two of them. "Connor," Grushna said softly. "Yes, thank you for everything, for saving me, for loving me, for giving me this life. You do not need to thank me. You have given me just as much. Then thank you anyway. I need you to know how much it all means to me. I know, and I feel the same way about you." He pressed a kiss to her shoulder. "Sleep now. Tomorrow will be another good day, the best days," Grushna murmured, already drifting off. "Every day with you is the best day." Connor smiled in the darkness and closed his eyes. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, a soft lullaby that carried them both into sleep. Their home was warm and secure, filled with love and laughter. The future stretched out before them, bright with possibility. It had all begun with a knock at the door at dusk, a desperate request for water, and a man willing to see beyond fear and prejudice to the person in need. From that single moment of kindness, a life had been built, a love had been forged, a family had been created. And every day, Connor thanked whatever fate had brought Grushna to his door, because she had given him the greatest gift imaginable. A reason to live, a purpose to fight for, and a love that would last forever. The seasons continued their endless cycle, and the Oaks family grew and thrived. Shara developed her mother's strength and her father's patience, becoming a bridge between the human and orc communities. Eric showed an aptitude for healing and began studying with the settlement's physician, learning how to tend wounds and cure illnesses. Connor and Grushna grew older together, their hair graying but their love never dimming. They remained partners in everything, working side by side on the farm, raising their children, supporting their community. When people asked them about their unusual marriage, they always told the same story, how a pregnant orc woman had knocked at dusk asking only for water, and a human man had come back with a full supper tray. "That is when I knew," Grushna would say, her hand in Connor's. "That is when I knew he was different, that he saw me as a person, not a monster. And that is when I knew," Connor would add, "that some things are more important than old prejudices, that kindness and compassion matter more than race or species." Their story spread through the southern territories, becoming a legend of sorts. Parents told it to their children as an example of what was possible when people chose love over hate, compassion over fear. Young couples, both human and orc, looked to Connor and Grushna as proof that mixed relationships could work, could thrive, could create something beautiful. On their 10th anniversary, the community threw them a celebration. Tables were set up in the town square, laden with food and drink. Musicians played, and people danced late into the night. Connor and Grushna were the guests of honor, surrounded by friends and family, by the community that had embraced them and helped them build their life. As the evening wound down and the stars came out, Connor pulled Grushna onto the dance floor for one last dance. They moved slowly, comfortably, two people who knew each other's rhythms and movements as well as their own. 10 years, Grushna said. "Can you believe it has been 10 years?" "It feels like both forever and no time at all," Connor replied. "I cannot remember what my life was like before you. Lonely, you said, purposeless. And now I have everything I ever wanted." He spun her gently, making her laugh. "A wife I adore, children who amaze me, a home that feels right." "What more could a man ask for? More dances like this one," Grushna suggested. "More years together, more memories to make, that I can promise, as many as we are given." They danced until the musicians packed up their instruments, until the last of the guests had gone home, until it was just the two of them and the starlight. Shara and Eric had gone home with a neighbor who had offered to watch them for the night, giving Connor and Grushna a rare evening alone. Walking home hand in hand, they took the long way through the settlement, past the houses they knew so well, past the fields that fed the community, past the school where their children learned. Every building, every path held memories. This place was as much a part of them as they were a part of it. At home, they sat on their porch one more time, wrapped in blankets against the cool night air. Connor thought about the journey that had brought them here, all the obstacles they had overcome, all the moments of fear and doubt. It had been worth it. Every struggle, every sacrifice had been worth it for this, for peace, for love, for family. "I would do it all again," he said aloud. Grushna looked at him. "Do what all again? Everything. Every hard choice, every difficult moment. If I knew it would lead me here, to you, to this life, I would do it all again without hesitation." She smiled and rested her head on his shoulder. "So would I. Despite everything I lost, everything I left behind, I would make the same choices, because they brought me to you. We are lucky, you know, to have found each other, to have built this. Not just lucky, blessed." She looked up at the stars. "Somewhere, somehow, the universe aligned to bring us together. I do not know why or how, but I am grateful for it every single day." Connor kissed her, a soft, lingering kiss that spoke of 10 years of love and many more to come. When they finally went inside and climbed into bed, they fell asleep in each other's arms, exactly as they had done every night since they were married. The years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges but never diminishing the love at the center of the Oaks family. Connor's hair turned gray and then white. Grushna's strength remained formidable, but age brought aches and pains that even her orc constitution could not entirely ignore. Shara grew into a young woman of remarkable grace and wisdom, eventually falling in love with a human man from a neighboring settlement. Eric became a respected healer, known throughout the territories for his skill and compassion. Connor and Grushna became grandparents, doting on Shara's children with the same fierce love they had shown their own. They remained active in the community, though they gradually handed over the running of the farm to younger hands. Their home was always open, always welcoming, a place where anyone could find a warm meal and a listening ear. On quiet evenings, they would still sit on their porch and watch the sunset, hands linked, comfortable in the silence that only comes from decades of shared life. Sometimes they talked about the past, remembering the night they met and all that had followed. Sometimes they talked about the future, wondering what the world would hold for their grandchildren. But mostly they just enjoyed being together, two souls who had found each other against all odds and built something that would outlast them both. Their story became part of the settlement's history, told and retold with each generation. The tale of the pregnant orc woman who knocked at dusk asking only for water, and the human man who came back with a full supper tray, became a parable about kindness, about seeing beyond differences, about the transformative power of love. Children grew up hearing the story and understanding that humans and orcs were not so different after all. Young people planning their lives looked to Connor and Grushna's example and knew that love could transcend boundaries. The elderly, reflecting on their own lives, found inspiration in a couple who had chosen each other despite everything the world threw at them. Connor and Grushna lived to a ripe old age, surrounded by family and friends, secure in the knowledge that they had lived well and loved deeply. When Connor finally passed, peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, Grushna mourned him with a depth of feeling that spoke to decades of partnership and love. She lived another 5 years, watching over their children and grandchildren before she too passed away, her hand still wearing the ring Connor had placed there so many years ago. They were buried side by side in the settlement cemetery, under a shared headstone that read simply, Connor and Grushna Oaks, husband and wife, together forever. But their true memorial was not the stone marker. It was the family they had created, the community they had helped build, and the countless lives they had touched with their example. Every mixed couple in the settlement, every half-orc child growing up without fear, every person who chose kindness over prejudice, all of them were part of Connor and Grushna's legacy. The little homestead where they had lived was maintained by their descendants, becoming a kind of shrine to what was possible when people looked beyond surface differences to see the person beneath. Visitors would come to see the place where the legendary romance had unfolded, standing on the porch where Connor had first offered Grushna shelter, imagining that first moment of connection that had changed everything. And on summer evenings, when the light faded to dusk and the stars began to appear, people swore they could feel something in the air around that old house, a warmth, a presence, a reminder that love was stronger than hate, that kindness could change the world, and that some bonds transcended even death itself. The story of Connor and Grushna lived on, passed from parents to children, from teachers to students, from elders to young people seeking guidance. It became more than just a story. It became a testament to what the world could be if people chose love over fear, compassion over cruelty, understanding over prejudice. And it all started with a simple knock at the door at dusk, a desperate request for water, and a man who chose to see a person in need rather than an enemy to be feared. From that single moment of grace, a love story for the ages was born, proof that the smallest acts of kindness can have the most profound consequences, and that love, true love, can overcome any obstacle the world places in its path.